Following the Leeds game, Everton may be about to completely change their tactics, which could see a completely new way of playing for Everton. To understand how and why this is going to take place, I'm going to be looking at why the defensive midfield role is now obsolete, how a hybrid system in midfield could influence Everton's attack, and why it gets the best out of not one, not two, not three, but several different players. So this was the lineup that started against Leeds, but it's more about this shape. The 4-2-3-1 that we see here has been David Moyes' preferred system since he took over. The last time we saw a completely different shape was when Leighton Baines and Seamus Coleman took interim charge of the team whilst Everton looked for a new manager and eventually appointed David Moyes. And this is a system that's bared a lot of fruit for David Moyes since he took over. It's had some good moments. It's also looked very limited at times, but with the system that he put in and the players we have in place, it did kind of get the best out of quite a few players. However, it left big gaps in exposing some players that weren't up to the tasks they were being asked to perform. And this system, bottom line, is that there is flaws in it, flaws that can't be fixed without recruitment, and it doesn't really look like Everton are going to make some wide-scale recruitment changes over these next few days. So the new system is important for this. But to understand this and why these changes are going to take place, we need to look at the problems the 4-2-3-1 posed, especially in that first half against Leeds, but has been a common theme throughout this season when Everton have been asked to create and structure their own attacks. Because the problem was when we bring in a ball here, we see Tarkowski in possession and build up, first stage build up after the ball has left Jordan Pickford's boot to the centre backs is an issue for me. When Everton have got the ball near the halfway line in with the centre backs, build up and passing into the next third or even progressing into the middle third has been a massive issue, with Tarkowski dithering on the ball quite a lot. Michael Keane, when he's been in this team, has also struggled, meaning that Gana Gueye has frequently dropped deep to get on the ball. James Garner as well. James Garner's quite good at it, but it doesn't really change much with this problem because Gana Gueye was the one dropping deep against Leeds, and on the ball, he's never going to be the player that sprays a ball 60 yards and breaks the line with a pass. He's more of a runner, we know this. He's good at penetrating the lines by running into the space, but when you ask him to unpick a defence or unpick a midfield block, that's not where his strengths lay. With these problems outlined, it's now important that we look towards this new system and how it affects Everton's tactics and how it addresses several problems, not just this one. And if we move along to here, only Pickford remains, but we're going to build out this team and how this new system is going to look by moving through the third. So let's start with the centre-backs. And of course, a huge addition to this Everton team when he's fit is Jarrad Branthwaite. Jarrad Branthwaite is probably our most expensive player market value-wise, and we honestly missed him so much. I think a lot of us forgot just how good he was until he came off the bench against Leeds and instantly just looked like the Rolls Royce we remember him to be. Alongside Branthwaite, who's in a left centre-back position here, we have James Tarkowski, and next to him, Jake O'Brien. And listen, this is where we need to firstly understand how this changes the system. Because of course Everton have played with a back four. O'Brien at times has been asked to play as a right back, moving all the way into these areas at times. And once he gets past this position, he's not very comfortable and does limit himself in terms of what he's able to do and contribute to the team. However, in a back three, he may be perfect. There's an argument to be made that his skill set is to play in a back three, and that could be a massive solution for Everton when it comes to structuring attacks, weirdly, as a defender. But let me explain how. Because in this system, you're getting the best out of each individual player. Because Jarrad Branthwaite in this position, and when he's not in a back four, even when he was in a back four last season, he would step up all the way into here because he's comfortable on the ball. Granted, he will make mistakes and did make mistakes on a few occasions last season. I think against Man United he made one, but that's irrespective of the point because as a player and as a talent, he gets better with every game he plays, and the comfort he shows on the ball is second to none. We don't have anything like him apart from him at Everton. So when you consider that he's excellent at carrying the ball into these areas of play, and Tarkowski is comfortable at defending in central areas and not really vacating that. It doesn't really like moving out to wide areas to defend because, of course, he isn't that mobile. However, as a physical centre-back that wins his duels and wins aerials, importantly, he is perfect for this centre-back role. Michael Keane could be maybe as well, but I think Tarkowski, with his ability to be vocal on the pitch and organise a defence, is the preferred option, and it's a no-brainer for me personally. O'Brien is an interesting one, because in the back three, listen, committing 2 of your centre-backs to play in the opponent's half is very risky business, especially when it's Tarkowski on his own back here, because obviously he's not got the pace to make these recovery runs and slide through on attackers who break past that line. So that's something to be careful of and considerate of. But O'Brien in this area, ability to move across into this position with the ball at his feet, he's comfortable at this. And we're going to talk about how this affects the forwards and midfielders in just a second. Because this back three, I think, is very suited to what Everton have personnel-wise. And it will get the best out of Everton's midfield. Let's move on to the wing-backs before we go to that midfield position. Because against Leeds, when Everton switched to this formation, we had Mykolenko there and we had Patterson there, both of which are more so fullbacks. Patterson's got a bit more about him going forward, but is never going to be a player that can beat a man and really look to attack that wide position that he's being asked to deal in. But Mykolenko suffers a similar problem, because Mykolenko, when he gets about here, his crosses, very rarely they hit this area of the pitch. They more so hit just behind this penalty spot. And of course, that leaves a big distance for Everton players to get a head on it or even get a foot on it to steer it towards goal. So I think Mykolenko's ability in the final third is a limiting factor for him in this formation, because when you play in a back three, your main role as a wing-back is to structure attacks, keep width, and be a threat, both of them in these areas, to allow the midfielders and strikers to stay in central areas and affect things in the most important part of the pitch, which is that middle part of the pitch just here. With that considered, I think Patterson will be given some more time to develop, because he started 3 games in a row for the first time this season and for the first time in a while. So I think he can be moulded. I'm not really made my mind up on Patterson. I'd be interested in the comments to see if other people have or not. Of course, we're linked with Brooke Norton-Cuffy, who I think would be an instant upgrade and somebody that we should absolutely be bringing in if we can, with the rumoured fee being about £20 million. I might make a whole separate video on him, so subscribe and like this video if you want to see that, because I think he can change a lot of the tactical approach for Everton, especially in wide areas, with his unique ability to beat men out wide, something that Patterson nor Mykolenko do. However, somebody who does have this, and we saw it against Sunderland in the FA Cup, is Adam Asnou. Now, the problem with Adam Asnou that we've been told and fed, I think, by David Moyes and some of the people at the club, is that defensively he's a bit fragile and physically he lacks a bit when it comes to the Premier League. Of course, we saw Anthony Gordon complaining, surprise, about the physicality of the Premier League, and all but saying that Arsenal are ruining the league is what he said indirectly, in my opinion. But in this system with Branthwaite behind Asnou, he's got that physical barrier that will help him progress up the pitch. And Asnou, with the ball at his feet, of course, is our most direct wing-back. He, against Sunderland, came on in a forward position, won the penalty, and also created 4 dribbles, successful dribbles, after coming on in the 86th minute, something like that. So I think this formation could be a real platform for Asnou to step up and thrive, whilst also taking away some defensive responsibility that he may have had in a back 4, and just to let him to settle in a bit more. I think what we saw against Sunderland is more than we've seen from Dwight McNeil all season, despite that Sunderland cameo being incredibly short for Adam Asnou. So I think he's earned a spot in this team, especially if we go with this system. One concern is that I am a bit worried that Asnou wasn't thrown on instead of Mykolenko against Leeds, because that game was crying out for someone like Adam Asnou, with Leeds having a midfield block in a very tight central area. A winger like Asnou in a wide area could have been something that changed the game, with that little bit of spark to be able to beat a man out wide. Nevertheless, the midfield is something that is going to change, in my opinion. And there's a school of thought to think that Garner and Gay would be the preferred options. And of course, we saw Gay move into these areas to create the goal that equalised against Leeds. And he's able to do this because he's able to leave this part of the pitch, because there's this defensive structure behind him, meaning that There's 3 players going to be back there at all times, alongside a right wing back if you need it, and a left wing back, so they can create a 5 out of possession, meaning that transitions become less dangerous, or Everton at least have more bodies than the opponent do when transitions occur. So Gay is able to vacate his position and move into these areas. However, I don't really think Gay's the best player at the club to use to do this with. I think this could be a midfield duo that really lets Everton establish that midfield too, and lets these players grow together to become as good as we know they can be. Garner this season has really exploded past that ceiling that a lot of people gave him without warrant really, and I think he's gone from being viewed as a tidy midfielder who can put in a challenge to an all-out 8 that can do a bit of everything, can cross the ball, can take set pieces incredibly well, has a brilliant strike with both feet, and also can create chances. So I think Garner in deeper positions is wasted, but it's not really needed because we have this back 3 able to dictate play, and this is why I like it, because we've got Branthwaite here on the ball, and he's, of course, going to be comfortable moving into these areas of the pitch. Tarkowski stepping up, O'Brien stepping up as well. Meaning that Garner doesn't really have to come short to ask for the ball from the centre-backs. I mean, he can stay that bit higher and we can get the best out of him in the final third. Harrison Armstrong, again, he's been playing as a 10 in this Everton system, but Moyes likes a 10 that can run and is energetic and can cut off passing lanes when the opponents are trying to build up with their goalkeeper. Harrison Armstrong in this position, being as a true 8, is something that I see him as going forward, and I think that's the position he's going to end up in. At Preston, when he came back from Preston, I went back and watched a lot of his Preston footage, and this is a position that they eulogized him for. He was absolutely unbelievable in a double pivot, sometimes as part of a 3, but mainly as that box-to-box 8 midfielder, and I think him and Garner could build a really nice partnership there, and something that Everton can build on with Garner signing a new contract and Harrison Armstrong only being a young player. That can be a spine of a team that Everton look to build around, and something that's not going to change unless stupid money comes in. Now let's look at the forward line, because I think this is where a big change comes in, and it does get the best out of players in my opinion. So one problem that we've had this season is that Iliman Ndiaye has been asked to do a lot when he's in possession. Of course, he's played on the right wing a lot this season, but mainly starts extremely wide just to be able to get on the ball and receive passes. And we saw against Sunderland earlier on in the season, even if he does start all the way back here, he can dribble his way all the way up to the pitch into this area and score a goal. But asking him to do that every week is just, we'd be foolish to ask him to perform to that level every week, and it would be quickly become known to other Premier League teams that he's our only threat. So this formation would allow Ndiaye to play in this half space here, allowing him just to sit in this zone and look to play with the striker here, because I think that Ndiaye is a player that likes to play in central spaces. He has the footwork and quick feet to be able to get out of any tight areas in the pitch, doesn't matter where he actually plays. But at Sheffield United, he played as a second striker behind a big target man, meaning that he is adept at this, and Sheffield United, as many will remember, the Sheffield United fans still love him because of that role he played for them. So Ndiaye as that left inside forward, I think is perfect for it, because when he's got movement surrounding him in Adam Asnou holding the width in this area, it means that Ndiaye doesn't really need to move into these wide areas and instead can focus on really looking to target this corner of the box. And the same can be said about Keenan Dewsbury-Hall, because Dewsbury-Hall has played as an attacking midfielder for Everton this season, and he's been excellent at making those runs beyond the striker, and as well by making runs into the half space, namely on the left, linking with Grealish. But Ndiaye prefers to play on the left, and I think Keenan Dewsbury-Hall is so versatile, it doesn't really matter which specific part of the pitch you play him in, because he can also make these runs when he's on the right hand side. And what I like about this position for him is that, say Everton lose the ball and we're scrambling to get back into position and we're defending our own box just here, it does allow Everton to make this structure. So Garner could come across at Armstrong to defend this spot, and then Dewsbury-Hall could then come back into the midfield 3, and then Everton have a bank of 5 and a bank of 3 out of possession. And you can see here just how solid this would be in the central area of the pitch. That's very difficult for opponents to play through. And the problem is when you're playing against back 5s, where you operate with a back five, is that teams often look to isolate the wing backs and overload them with a winger and a fullback. However, Branthwaite is mobile enough to help Asnu and come across, meaning that Tarkowski would just slide in there. And then the same could be said about O'Brien. Say this is flipped on the other side and the opponents are attacking down this side, trying to get at Patterson. O'Brien, as someone who's played right back more than he has centre back, despite being a centre back, is more than comfortable in sweeping up in these areas, and playing next to Patterson could be something that allows Patterson to probably feel a bit more comfortable and wouldn't be as rash and would have to overcommit when defending, because he knows he has O'Brien there. And of course, Dewsbury Hall can move over across. Garner can then protect that back three, and Armstrong plugs that gap there. But if we move back to how it was with Harrison Armstrong here, Garner here, Dewsbury Hall as that attacking midfielder, Patterson moving up, Asnu all the way up high like that, and then these three centre-backs moving up there. One position still remains vacant, and that position is striker. It's not Beto, don't worry. It's Tieno Barry. Of course it's Tieno Barry. And what I really think that would work well for Tieno Barry in this position is that when we play direct into him, he has two bodies so close to him in Dewsbury Hall and Njai that he can then look to work with them. And I think a problem for Barry has been this season that he's being propelled the ball from 50 yards away and then being asked to hold it up for 3-4 seconds before the cavalry arrives to help him and get him out of trouble. But with Tieno Barry having those bodies close to him all the time, it just gives Everton that bit more, more of an ability to play that ball into him, knowing that Barry can play a little bounce pass into them. And as well, with the wing back staying incredibly high like this, there's more opportunity for Everton to really look to play these balls into the box for Barry. We know he likes those balls into the box. We saw it against Leeds. And I think that this could be a great way of doing it without actually having to play with out-and-out wingers. I think these tactics could genuinely work for Everton, but I'm interested to know if other people agree or not, because I think it's a time of change for Everton. With Jarrad Branthwaite coming back, O'Brien showing how comfortable he is at centre-back, and all the different aspects in terms of Adam Armstrong and Garner's relationship, as well as Iliman Ndiaye, playing in that left half-space zone, as well as Adam Asnu, of course. There are a lot of different things to consider of whether they will work or whether they won't work. So I'm interested to know. Let me know in the comments what you think our formation should be against Brighton on Saturday. We'll be here after the game doing a match review, making a tactical analysis on that game. So subscribe if you haven't, and thank you very much.